I'm still wholesaling in Los Angeles area, and I get outbid all the time. For those of you who do not know who I am, I'm a full-time wholesaler here in Los Angeles. I actually recently moved to San Diego, but I was born and raised in LA, and the majority of my deals have been in the LA County market. I've done deals in several other markets, such as Kansas and Florida and Texas. However, I found that doing deals in my own backyard has been way more beneficial, lucrative for me because I know the area very, very well, right? So this video is essentially to how to calculate your offer price, right? How to correctly analyze a deal, especially in the markets with the higher price tags, such as Los Angeles. I think the median house price in Los Angeles right now is like 1.2 million, right? So when we get to higher price points like that, when we're talking about the 70% rule, that all that kind of goes out the window, right? Because I'm not saying that you can't use it. It's just that you're going to be outbid by so many other buyers and wholesalers who know the area very, very well. Because when you get to the higher price points, anything above 700K, 900K, when you get to millions, 70% minus repairs will pretty much get you nowhere, right? And I'm only saying this because I live through it every single day. Me as a wholesaler, I'm still wholesaling in Los Angeles area, and I get outbid all the time, right? And I'm not using 70% rule. If I were, then I really wouldn't have a chance, right? So there's a much better way to calculate your deals, and it has nothing to do with the 70% rule. So for this video, I want to pretend like that does not exist, right? And I want to teach you the more accurate way to calculate your deals, right? So with this method, we're going to go ahead and take all the factors that come into play, right? And then we're going to subtract them linearly, right? So before I begin, be sure to subscribe, like, and follow me for more information. I'm going to be posting videos like this every week, right? So please stay tuned for more. Just like the 70% rule, everything starts with the ARV, right? So I can do a whole other video on how to find the ARV. That's more on the comping side. But for this video, let's all assume we have our ARV already in place, right? So it always starts with the after repair value. So after the after repair value, the first thing that we want to subtract is 6%. So where is that 6% going, or why do we subtract the 6%? So when we have to kind of think of things in the flipper's point of view, and that's one of the biggest struggles that I personally see a lot of wholesalers going through, is that they forget that their job is not really to make a deal. Their job is really to make their end buyers money, right? So if you were to change your mindset and look at things as the flipper's point of view, like you were actually going to buy this, you have to realize that at the end of the flip, there's all these fees that come into play. So the first set of fees are realtor fees and closing costs, right? So at the end of the flip, once we've already renovated the property and we list it back on the market, we're going to have to hire a realtor and pay closing costs on the sell side. So we want to take that out right now, take that into consideration. So we take away 6% for realtor fees and closing costs. So I'm going to write that down right here. Realtor fees, excuse my horrible writing, and closing costs. Okay. So once we take that number, so whatever that number may be, we take that number and we subtract 15%. So now this is another little confusing part, but it all goes back to the mindset, right? We have to think like the investor. So the typical return on investment for a flip is 10 to 20%, right? 10 being lower end, 20 being a really, really good deal. So we like to be somewhere in the middle. I always choose 15%. You can always do more, but 15 is usually the go-to. So this is the profit that the flipper makes at the end of the flip, right? So we want to take that out in the beginning, right? At the buy. Remember, because the fortunes are made at the buy, right? Never in the repair, always at the buy. So after we subtract 15%, and I'm just going to write this here. So this is flipper's profit. So now we've already subtracted. So let's start from the beginning. We have our ARV. We subtracted 6%. Okay. Then we're going to take whatever that number is and we're going to subtract that number by 15%. Okay. So now we're left with another number, right? Whatever number that is. And I'm going to do an example after this, right? So once we're done with the 15%, we're going to go ahead and we're going to subtract our repair costs. So I have a lot of wholesalers asking me, well, how do you figure out the repair costs? Truth be told, you're never going to really get it right. But, I've heard this from a few flippers that I know. Anywhere between $50 to $75 per square foot is what the average fix and flip project costs to rehab. Of course, when you're getting to really, really torn down properties, you're going to go above $75 a square foot. But if it's a regular fix and flip property, $50 to $75 a square foot, depending on the condition. So once we subtract repair costs, we're going to go ahead and subtract holding costs. So what is holding costs? Okay. Holding costs is really big, especially when a buyer's dealing with hard money, right? It's interest on the loan. It's lender points, right? It's stuff like that. It's taxes, stuff like that. So the longer that the investor has to hold this property, the more the holding costs are. So once again, it's really hard to understand the holding costs, the specific amount, because that's going to be up to the buyer. Once they buy it and they talk to the lender and everything like that, then they're going to have a better idea of what the holding costs are. But I like to just take away a buffer, right? So that's about like $10,000 to $20,000, right? So holding costs can be, anywhere from 10 to 20K. That's just to be conservative, just so that there's an extra room for the buyer. Once all is said and done and we have subtracted all these numbers, then we can start thinking of ourselves. That's when we want to make money, right? So we're going to take whatever number this is at the very end of this equation, and we're going to subtract our wholesale fee. Okay. So doing this, right, to me, it's way better than the 70% rule, because you know exactly what you're taking out every step of the way. Okay. So of course, and just like any business, you pay yourself last, right? If we can take away all these numbers and there's still room for us to make a profit, that profit can be absolutely anything as long as the numbers work with the seller, right? So with this being said, taking away your wholesale fee at the end can result to a small $5,000 wholesale fee or to a big, maybe $70,000 wholesale fee. It really depends on the situation and how low the seller is willing to go once you've already taken away the essentials. Okay. So guys, if you really enjoyed that video, like I said, I'm going to post videos like this every single week with everything that I've learned throughout the 5 years of wholesaling. I do this full time. And if you really want to join a community of wholesalers and buyers and realtors and stuff like that, we actually have an exclusive group called the Deals Together Network, right? So check out the link in the description, sign up for the Deals Together Network, and do deals with us. All right. Thanks, guys.